And we're recording. So this is Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, Afterlife University, where we hold classes like this. So if I put this on YouTube, it means that you're watching it on YouTube, in which case these are our classes. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Today we are talking about, well, what I often talk about, which is afterlife misconceptions, but I wanted to get into kind of a theory I've had about the origin of a lot of like misconceptions that people have about life after death or a lot of these spiritual topics. Then you guys can tell me what you think. As usual, we have a discussion afterwards. If I decide to put this on YouTube, I don't know if I will, then you can join in the comments. You can also get involved with these classes. Just shoot me a message on Facebook, leave a comment, or check the channel description for more information. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Actually, I need to close my couple of programs running. Da-da. There we go. One moment, I think I have like something in my eye. If I'm a little bit slow, it's because it is only 6 a.m., 6:10 a.m. here in Japan. Daylight savings in the U.S. messed up the time zones here. So a little bit groggy, but pulling it together. Here we are. So it's a little introduction. So why are there so many conflicting reports about the other side? In my observation, these conflicting reports are less conflicting than one may think. It actually appears more like there's two elements. Real quick, let me just double check, make sure that I'm using my microphone. Sorry, guys. I don't want to, with last time there was issues with Zoom using the wrong audio, and it made the audio really bad. Testing. Okay, looks like we are using the microphone. Great. Yeah, Zoom randomly likes to deselect the microphone and then go to my computer audio. And like with the interview with Nicole DeHaas, it did that, and then I put it online, and the audio was terrible. So, man, all this stuff. Oh man, it gives me such a headache sometimes. Anyway, so why are there so many conflicting reports about the other side? It actually appears more like there's maybe two elements. Like, I think this is obviously it's oversimplifying things, but my sort of a conclusion I've had is that there's a psychic, mental versus astral or tangible spiritual experiences. So there's like these two different kinds of spiritual experiences. Right? That's really the topic of this class. That's the theory that I have. So people can have both types of experiences, or they can have blends of these two experiences. So see the next slide comparison. So psychic, mental versus astral, tangible. So a psychic or mental experience includes DMT experiences such as psilocybin, ayahuasca, etc. Higher self experiences, so experiences with the quote, the light. I know some people believe the light is some malevolent entity out to get us. I'm going to be kind of neutral in that debate just because there's so many people who believe there's something funny going on. And there very well could be something funny going on with certain people's experiences with the light. And then nothing surprises me anymore. There could be something impersonating it, or who knows. But we do know that it's generally referred to as a higher self experience. So when we see the light, it communicates to us, and it's like all knowing, all powerful, and we interpret it as God. It could very well be like the embodiment of the group soul, which we talked about in the last couple of classes last week. Experiences of cosmic consciousness. inner world experiences, so advanced dream states, creating your own world around you. Maybe even certain near-death experiences where people have, experiences where it's like they're their own god, creating everything they want, making whole universes, making whole worlds in their own little self-contained realm. There's no end to like the crazy, profound like NDEs and or DMT types of trips that people talk about. Life review experiences. So sometimes that's all somebody will have. So then they'll have like an NDE. They'll meet like the light. They'll get the life review. And they get this huge telepathic download of information about their whole life. Um, Past life experiences, that's like akashic trips, recollections, having like a holographic experience of a moment in my past life. We talk about that. Past lives are probably group soul, like different incarnations in your group soul. Might not be your own past life, or it might be your past life. That's maybe there's two different types of reincarnation. That's a different subject we'll talk about someday. Now compare that to astral/tangible experiences. So experiences in cities, realms, or civilizations during NDEs. So it's a valuable distinction. Not every NDE is like Anita Morjani's. There's many NDEs where somebody wakes up to find themselves in a city. People talk about like crystalline upper astral cities. There's fewer NDEs that involve like the normal kind of astral world that a lot of us hear about, like people like me who go out of body a lot. And I do think that's very curious. Like, I don't know why that, NDEs tend to report the higher astral types of realms, crystal cities and, people floating around in libraries and, these types of kind of like really pristine, like we would call higher astral experiences. I actually think that it could be because it has something to do with being able to recall or have memories. So it may even be that when you're in these higher environments, it's easier to get the memories back of the experience than it is if we go to like the more common astral levels. It may even explain why, only a small percentage of people who have cardiac arrest have any memory of like an NDE happening. To be one of these things where it's like the only people who do get memories are the people who have like the more profound, spiritually transformative experiences, because those are the experiences that are, interesting or powerful enough to transcend like brain blockage, memory barriers. So it's almost like this, how do you say it? Like confirmation bias. I don't know if that's the correct term, but it's like the only near-death experience, the only experiences we can remember are certain types of experiences, right? And the ones we can't remember, well, we can't remember, so we're not so sure if they're real. Next is contact with deceased loved ones. So people, you're dying or having a near-death experience, and then people come into the room with you to greet you. Again, tangible. It's not a mental thing. It's, sometimes other people who are not dying will sense or feel or even see the deceased loved ones coming into the room. A lot of stories like that, super interesting. Like imagine someone's at someone's bedside who's dying, and then there's somebody else at their bedside who's like Grandpa Earl who passed away 20 years prior. And it's like, everybody else can see Grandpa Earl. As weird as that sounds, I've heard stories like that. I'd like to chronicle more of those stories. Maybe someday I'll write a book about it. After death contacts, of course, the whole wide range of those. Deceased loved ones visiting, materializing, again, tangible. Other people can experience, not just mental. Meeting new people objectively in astral states. So that's a big one. So if I'm doing an astral trip and I appear on that side, I get information from somebody, and they come back here and I look them up and I confirm who it is. So this happened to me a couple of times with people I've met during projection experiences, and then I get their contact info. But what it is that they've died on this plane, but I can look up like their obituaries, or their memorial pages in one instance. So that obviously is proof that it was a real experience, tangible. Advanced ITC or EVP, so Sonia Rinaldi's work, again, as a quote spirit person waving at the camera in an ITC photograph that's generated real, tangible, astral tangible. Physical mediumship, things of that nature. So, we have psychic or mental or astral tangible. So these are both types of like contact with the other side, but really different types. One is about the inner self, exploration of consciousness, and the other one is also exploration of consciousness, but like kind of like moving into a different dimension that's quite tangible. So what is the source of most misconceptions? Many people innocently confuse these two categories or never experience the astral objective, but only these mental trips. So in the semen life, we have a combination of hierarching mental experiences and down-to-earth experiences in objective worlds. The problem is negating one for the other creates a skewed perspective of reality. There is also an issue where people don't think beyond personal experiences. For example, XYZ happened to me, so I have no reason to believe in ABC. So again, with certain near-death experience authors, you get this issue coming up a lot. They experience the light and like heavenly bliss, and as a result, they don't believe that there's an afterlife where people, still have lives and still look like themselves, because they think that's what the afterlife is. And then, they believe that the afterlife is literally just being in that state for eternity. And I think most people with the critical thinking skills, like they hear that and then they veer away from it, because who wants to just be in eternal bliss and like a mono existence, like, floating around for eternity? It's like just floating in the light or whatever it might be. So I think most people, that sounds really like, sure, eternal bliss means you're not going to be thinking about anything else, because it's like this, endless drug trip basically. But, what happens to like creativity and individuality and meeting people and, having an existence. So because someone experiences that, they don't have a comprehension of an afterlife, which leads to the question, like, are all near-death experiences afterlife experiences? And in my opinion, the answer to that is no. Let's say some NDEs are literal afterlife experiences, and some are higher self, kind of like DMT trips. So I think it's a really big distinction that we have to start looking at, taking very seriously. Based on personal experience, inhabitants of astral realms may report near-death experience-like incidences that happen to them. So this is based on questionnaires that I've done to people on that side who remember their death experience on this world as being like an NDE. So they'll say, I used to live in your dimension, your density, your plane. We use those terms, they use those terminologies too. And I remember when I died, like I was met by a light and, had a life review, yada, yada, yada. So they'll recount having had like a near-death experience before they ended up where I see them now, which is like the astral world, wherever it is I'm meeting them. Could be on the street, could be in a restaurant, could be, anywhere, because the kind of common normie astral world is, as I often talk about, a fairly like, it's not a super elaborate place. It's so we still have a lot of the stuff we have here. Lots different, but it's still pretty nuts and bolts. If you can get to that side and have like a really tangible experience, then you'll discover that. This suggests these experiences eventually end, and then they return to lives that they may have whatever fits them best. And yeah, it may not be in that world. It could be in these upper echelon places. It could be like, in these higher astral densities. Maybe your group soul was a Pleiadian alien, and then you go back to Pleiadian aliens. I don't know. Nobody knows where you are going to go specifically. But the point being, I'm pretty sure, the NDE type things that happen, if they happen at all, if you get a life review, if you even meet with your higher self. And I think an argument can be made, about that not happening to everybody, or maybe somebody not wanting that to happen. Then I think eventually that experience ends. And then it's like, okay, well, what now? Are you still going to be you? Do you want to join the galactic cosmic soup, or do you want to still, still be the person you were and continue on your journey? And if the latter is true, then it's okay. Well, where are you going to go? What next? Are you going to this astral world that most people go to? Are you going to, yourself incarnate? Not like your group soul, but are you going to, as you want to go, pop up somewhere else or go to some other planet? Like, who knows? It's up to you. Like, what do you want to do? So that's a big point, I think, that people miss. Again, I already talked about the whether the NDE is an afterlife experience. So yeah, are these experiences designed to be temporary, or do they exist concurrently to a more tangible or incarnated form of existence? So it's kind of like we get these mental, psychic, higher self experiences, but it's almost like this is a separate part of us, that a separate kind of thing that we experience, so it's not, so it's in tandem with our objective kind of physical solid lives. Then we have like this much more, abstract mental part of ourselves. So it's kind of like these two things work together, rather than being one or the other, right? Mental states are more accessible. So the challenge is that mental states may be easier to obtain than tangible experiences. So a tangible experience may not be accessible to people as easily. However, by, quote, going inward, it's possible to explore intangible realms or pure consciousness modes of existence. So it's also possible to induce these states chemically, as many do now to have spiritually transformative experiences, which of course should be done with great care. I don't advocate for using mushrooms or DMT substances or whatnot. I personally don't do it. I can go into detail about that in the future. I don't. For me, it's not something that I'm interested in. But the point is that people can access these mental states like that even with a substance. So that's kind of interesting, right? So it's definitely makes it these types of spiritual experiences much easier to access. Notice that in chemically induced experiences, there are fewer, if any, contacts with deceased loved ones, highly indicative of this dual concept. So that's something to consider. Like, I really haven't heard about people taking DMT and contacting like deceased people. So I think again, that's a big point to consider here with this topic. Because if these were experiences in tangible realms, then that would be happening much more often. That probably does happen. I just haven't personally heard about stories like that. But that's further evidence that this stuff means that you're being shot inwardly, connecting like with your higher self into an inner dimension, not necessarily going outward or externally. With ayahuasca, you get a little bit of a blend because a lot of people go to the same type of realm. They meet the ayahuasca fairy, which is like a female entity that many people who take ayahuasca encounter, and they'll encounter the same entity again and again and again. This is one of these things that confounds the skeptics. So our mental states activated, but tangibility is our baseline. So interesting point recently made by Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan podcast. So Joe Rogan says DMT is likely a chemical that activates a higher dimension that propels us into the afterlife. And he mentioned this in the recent Alex Jones interview. This is like massive 4-hour, very, very viral video. But basically, so he's talking about how a chemical like that may serve a purpose in nature that relates to us actually moving into a different realm to help us go through a certain process that's needed before we can settle down into whatever our state, whatever our new dimension might be. Our NDEs, therefore, caused by DMT, and when the chemical component fades, we return to normal. So yeah, it could be that as that NDE trip begins to end, one slows down, enters the parallel dimension of choice. Alternatively, this is to the afterlife being one continual trip. So sometimes people believe as well that if they have had a DMT type experience, that after they die, then it's going to be like one continual acid trip that never ends. But again, if we're talking about balance in life, is that something everybody really wants? I don't think that's something that I would want. So what do you think about that? Misconceptions that arise. So confusing tangible and purely mental or cosmic experiences spell some trouble for understanding this subject. It can result in misconceptions like, as I just mentioned, it's one perpetual DMT trip. There is no solidarity after we die, or we become orbs of light or pure energy. I think I saw a video where Bob Olson was mentioning that. So again, it's a very persistent misconception. We are no longer ourselves, our individuality is extinguished. And of course, everything we do is pre-planned, or all souls are perfect. And Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy are perfect souls in heaven. Where do these ideas come from? So as an example, the latter idea that I criticize a lot could be a result of experiencing a sense of like a loving universal perfection at the kind of like the source or the inner source, experiencing that, kind of misinterpreting that to mean that it applies to objective, tangible experiences, because you've had almost like this deep philosophical experience. So you're kind of confusing these two things together. Like maybe philosophically, on a grand spiritual perspective, every soul is perfect, but does that relate to the actual literal like identity of Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer? I don't think so. And then, it doesn't relate to direct spirit communication, which would definitely disprove that idea. So only on this like grander philosophical sense, but is it responsible to be teaching that if that doesn't relate to objectivity? It seems likely the higher self is disconnected from the individual self, even on the astral or afterlife levels. So on one hand, you're permanently connected to a higher self or a group soul in a certain way. But in another way, it's like we are also permanently disconnected. So it's like we can flip between these states of existence. And it's kind of like I believe these two states depend on each other. It's like there is an imbalance if you're just in one state. Like you need the individual incarnated self, and you need the higher cosmic self. And so this is a longer one. So, and of course, there's the worst misconceptions. The worst misconception is that mental states are superior to tangible states, so we must transcend beyond them. Now, the thing is that transcending beyond the tangible state or the incarnated state or whatever you want to call it seems impossible unless you get like an IV drip of DMT continually running. My theory is a soul does not desire being swallowed up forever to cosmic consciousness trips or NDE-like states. Based upon one's own desires, there necessitates a return to a real or solid environment. A soul also does not desire just being in a physical form and identity and requires reconnection to quote source to stay happy and feel unified. So we need both states of existence. Just well, this is just an idea. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not. This is also why possibly why minute amounts of psilocybin is proving to be highly effective as a natural antidepressant, much more than prescription drugs. A lot of like breakthrough research happening right now about taking like small milligram doses of like psilocybin mushrooms, because it just gives you a little bit more connection to like a higher self. But saying one mode is superior to the other goes against, I think, how most people feel on a core level. So, final discussion, what are your thoughts or opinions about all this? Have you had purely mental versus tangible experiences? And can you notice the distinction? And overall, like, what is your opinion about some of these ideas? So, for those of you who don't mind being on camera and want to jump in, I'll turn it over to you guys. Anybody who has any opinions or thoughts about that? There's a bunch of you in the class. I'm sure there's somebody here who has an idea. Corey, I think you were talking.
I'd like a bunch of these people on this freeway to transcend themselves right off it. I can't seem to get away from them. This Prius doesn't go fast enough to transcend anything.
Hey, Corey, I know my way a little bit around LA. Where are you at?
I'm up in Victorville, getting ready to go down the hill.
Oh, Victorville. Okay, yeah, I've been there, but I guess I don't know my way around there. Otherwise, yeah.
The car's shaking a little bit. We're doing 80 miles an hour, and
Well, be careful. That's I don't know which freeway you're on, but be careful. Anyway, somebody else was going to say something. Was it Keely or?
No, I was listening.
Oh, okay.
I was just waiting for someone else to talk.
Well, let's see. So I know this is a little bit of a complicated subject. But I guess the main point is, we talk about there's this distinction, I think, between higher self, intangible experiences, and like tangible experiences. So has anybody else noticed that separation, or is it just me? Like I need to figure out if this is just like if my thoughts have any basis in reality, basically. So if anybody can help me out with that, has anybody felt a distinction between those two different concepts?
Well, this is why I listen to you, because I align myself more with what you're thinking. You, Alan, there's a bunch of people that I kind of align with. There's a whole bunch of people I don't align with. So, it's hard to tell what's real and what's not real, but
I think we're cutting off a little bit, Corey. It's okay though. Focus on the highway. So if you're going 80 miles an hour, no one is so good at multitasking where they can do that and participate. So, okay, I might have to pick on a couple of people here though. Paula, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I haven't heard from you in a while. Have you ever felt like you've had like an intangible, like mental, spiritual experience? Would you say that that's different from like a tangible sort of like nuts and bolts experience?
It kind of resonated for me more, nobody really knows what that really is until we all go there, because, but I think that I like to think there is a tangible place, I like to think that there is continuation of our personality and, and we doing things that we like to do. And I don't resonate too much with the you go and you are like in a complete eternity bliss, mental state. And I had a couple of out-of-body experience that they were tangible, and I was able to meet my son and Nicholas on the other side on the astral world. So I think and it's kind of confusing because I study a lot of near-death experience, and they have more, the mental really completely different compare the tangible experience. So, I really, it's a complicated topic, I try to think that it's more like that there is an astral world, and there is like different, things they are similar to this dimension, but upgraded. Like, I kind of think like you, so.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, it's confusing when you study the NDEs because
Yeah.
there is that big difference, and that's kind of the point of like this topic. Is I'm trying to like square away those differences because it does create this really confusing divide. But then the more I thought about it, like the more it started to make sense, where it's not so confusing anymore. But I also think it's confusing for people who have the experiences, that there is, kind of like, it's difficult to imagine there's a little bit of a separation between tangibility and intangibility, because especially people who have NDEs, that they come away from like everything is one, everything is unified, it's all this grand cosmic blah, 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 blah. But it's difficult then to go from that to say, but, there's this type of experience and then there's that type of experience. But that does seem to be the case. Sam, I noticed you've written some stuff, so let me catch up with that. Hold on. So Sam asks, people's subconscious gets in the way of Sam states, people's subconscious gets in the way of NDEs as well. I think that's a really good point. And it also makes us have to wonder about what NDEs necessarily are. And I think sometimes, like when you on like an acid trip, and I don't know, because I did have a kind of somewhat negative experience. Basically, I think it was like marijuana brownies laced with some kind of hallucinogen as well. So I was just like tripping out once for hours and hours, but it wasn't really like a positive experience. And that was way many years ago in college. But so I don't have a lot of like personal experience though to back this up. But it seems like a lot of NDEs are from that perspective of like being shot into an inner world, and then oftentimes your subconscious will come into the forefront, and that's why there are some very curious, weird NDEs where I've heard about some weird stuff. Like imagine you're dying and you're greeted by like your favorite TV show characters or something this bizarre. So it's tough to say, it definitely seems like there's a hallucinogenic property sometimes to NDEs. So let's see more states by Sam says, so if they expect to see God or Jesus, they're going to see it. Yeah, so that could be related to that, but it could also be related, and this is if you read a lot of NDEs as well, it seems like what happens is that they're like your higher self, basically, or some entity pretends to be Jesus or a figure like that, because it's what you're conditioned to believe. And if you meet anybody else, it's going to freak you out. So if someone is like a Christian fundamentalist and they're dying, they're going to go really loopy if they see anybody but Jesus. So a guide or somebody has to basically put on a Jesus outfit, or else, it's going to be a failure. The whole mission to get you over to the other side is going to fail. You're going to freak out, think you're going to hell, not go with everybody, end up like stuck on this side. The whole thing could be a disaster. So it's like someone has to come in and put on the Jesus costume. Now, I also think there could really be Jesus as well coming to see people, because from all the stuff I've read, it seems like Jesus is this kind of like multi-dimensional entity. And then we hear about this in higher density people who have the ability to be in many places at once, just like Santa Claus. So that's probably where that subconscious myth comes from, is the concept that you can be multidimensional. So it could really be Jesus visiting people. I knew one person who was convinced it was Jesus during her near-death experience, an old girlfriend of mine. So totally plausible as well. Anyway, Sam says, so NDE, so horrible to use it for afterlife info. Okay, so near-death experiences are terrible to use for afterlife info because many OBers visited Christian heaven. It's a consensus belief environment. It's actually good for afterlife info because you get to see people being absolutely convinced that their like Christian fundamentalist version of heaven is the place that's the truth. It's, that's, everything was correct and all the preachers were correct. And being able to look at that objectively and see, well, we see that this is part of the astral world and it's kind of a it's a group environment that people created, and somebody's blown away because they had this NDE, but we can apply critical thinking to that and consider that this is not necessarily a place that we want to end up at. Okay, Keely, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, but a lot of like near-death experiences, if you read them, they say they hear a voice that they think is God or Jesus talking to them. They don't see them, like they don't see them eye to eye. They just hear the voice, right? And so maybe it is a loved one, a guide, whatever it might be, and they just take it as Jesus because that's what they're expecting to see or hear or find or whatever. Because a lot of times they just say, oh, I heard a voice that told me I had to go back, and they assume it was God or whatever. So,
yeah, no, I think that can happen as well. And I think there's a presumption of God, and this is always something funny because, again, in the New Age realm, sometimes we see just a complete breakdown of critical thinking, right? So, like, there's near-death experiences also that involve meeting God as like a guy on a throne with a big white beard. And I think anybody involved with objective like afterlife research can say that that is not the way reality operates. If there is a guy on a beard and on a throne who's telling you what to do, it's probably an impersonation. It could be what some people call an archon or an entity that's pretending to be high and powerful just because it wants to. It's like a spiritual narcissist that wants to control you. But nonetheless, there's been quite a few NDE accounts where someone's like, I met God and he is real and he has a big white beard. And even those NDEs, people like do not apply critical thinking to. So, people will report back that experience, but there was never any pushback about it. I know about this one NDE where, I think she was featured in a book I edited. I don't want to like badmouth her because it is a good NDE story, but it involved dancing in a garden with God. So she meets God, guy with a big white beard, and she dances with him. And so it's like, well, what's going on here? Probably it could be a complete just misinterpretation. You've met a guy who just so happens to think beards are fashionable, and so then you incorrectly think it's, quote, God. It could also be expectation fulfillment. It could be a mental experience, not really a tangible one. There's a lot going on there. It could be a hollow heaven, it could be a guide or some higher entity taking that role on. But what bothers me is the lack of critical thinking. It's like, we make all this progress, we learn about what the conditions are like, then somebody reports that they meet a god with a big white beard on a throne, and it's like, okay, let's just take all our research and push it back 500 years because, because somebody had this one NDE, now we have to believe that's real. I don't mean to rant about that. Anybody have any thoughts about that? Let's see what Sam says. Sam says it's a very small consensus environment. Jürgen talks about this. It's also NDEs where, and this was also in the same book I edited, Awakened by Death. There's a nice contrast because there's also a great chapter in that book called Heaven is Empty. It's one of the reasons I actually really like that book is because there was a great contrast of experiences. Like I have my experience in there, which contrasts some other ones. But then there's a great one called Heaven is Empty. So it might have been by Yvonne Ballard. I don't remember. But it's with her near-death experience. She was taken by a guide to show what, the afterlife was really all about. So the guide took her to a Christian fundamentalist heaven. And it's really interesting because basically they said that one of the things that eventually clues them in on the fact that it's not a really, quote, heaven is the fact that the place starts to get dirty. So, people leaving behind refuse and whatnot. And then the citizens of that realm are like, wait a second, if this place really belongs to like God, don't you think that like, if I leave a soda can on the ground, it's going to like clean itself up because, God is perfect. And, well, why is there like trash accumulating in our heaven? So I thought that was really funny. And I might be remembering chapter wrong, but if I recall that's what the guide explained. One of the reasons that the residents of that realm eventually begin to feel like there's something funny going on. Carol has to go. Okay, see you, Carol. Take care. Sam says every belief has a counterpart because of people's strong feelings. Yeah, that as well. So, so anybody else have any thoughts about any of those points?
No, about the book though. I know what chapter you're talking about. The whole book is good to read. It was really a good book. Some chapters are really uplifting. I was crying through half of it, but
yeah, me too.
Yeah, it was a really good book. But she go and then it's like she's stuck somewhere, but it gets dirty, and then she realizes she's not really there. I can't really remember the exact story, but never mind.
No worries.
It's kind of what you said, yeah. But yeah, I can't remember exactly what happened, but it was like, yeah, how you explained it.
Yeah, that's I hope there's some more books. I know Karen is working on a book about Corey's favorite topic, which is like people's extraterrestrial experiences. I think that might be the next one.
Good.
But I hope that book actually gets in more people's hands because it's
it's such a good book. It just has like a wide variety of experiences. They're all different. I mean, they're from all sorts of point of view, from people that lost loved ones, from people like near-death experience, out of body. I mean, just a lot of different experiences that all, it brings out a lot of emotion in you for sure. I really enjoyed that book.
Can you tell me the name of the book again and the author?
It's Awakened by Death.
Awakened by Death.
Yeah.
And it was by you and her, right, Cyrus?
Correct. It was edited by me.
Uh-huh.
Put together by her.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
Cool. So, again, kind of a complex subject today. I guess the main point here, though, is I'm still trying to confront misconceptions. But I mean, I guess that could be the main thing I do at this point. Really, is I'm confronting misconceptions. But who am I to judge what is a misconception and what isn't? But I think I have a pretty good handle on it by now. But I think the main point is that I don't know. I feel like the big issue is, there's different types of experiences, and it's really difficult to comprehend stuff that's outside of your own realm of experience. Kelly, is your hand raised again, or is that from before?
No, I raised it again, but go ahead and finish because it's kind of off topic, but I wanted to ask it anyways.
No worries. No, I was just saying that You know what? I lost my train of thought. Keely, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No worries. No.
I was just wondering, since you have been in Asia, have you had a lot of out of body experiences? And are you in Asia when you're like when you are out of body? Are you in like Japan or wherever?
That's a good question. The answer is, if I'm in Japan, the answer is no. So the out of body experiences I've had lately, I've been back at the family home. So I did meet with basically had an astral trip. I met with my mother, and she was popping into the astral home probably to visit me, but she had like this friend with her who was kind of like this Asian lady who was covered with tattoos. I don't know who this chick was. Some friend of my mom's, and my mom had like another baby with her. And I've seen my mom with like babies before. That seems to be her main thing, is like she's taking care of people's babies or something like that.
Aww.
And she was, I'm like, where are you gonna put this latest baby? She's like, oh, here in this bedroom. And so then she started like materializing like these stuffed animals that she said she bought. So I don't know, you know how it's weird over there. So it's like she had bought all these like stuffed toys, but she had kept them like in the database or whatever. And then she's like, let me just bring them over. So we're pulling them out, and there was like this giant stuffed elephant, like stuff you wouldn't really be able to carry anyway. So again, it's kind of like the Matrix, just like flip through the database, pull something out. But I guess she said she had bought them before, and so she was like putting them around the place. And I was basically like, well, how are you going to take care of this baby? Because I never see you here in this house. Most of the time, if I'm here, I don't even see you. And she, I don't know. So I don't know. It was kind of funny. And there was this other lady with her, and I couldn't even figure out, like, there's some friend of hers. But I guess I don't know. It's like, they don't have to worry about the same things on that side. But it's just funny. Like my mom, she just parties so much. It's difficult for me to reconcile that with like her taking care of kids. And I think that was kind of my issue I was bringing up with her. It's like, you have the most, like, if any astral resident I know, she has like the most like kind of unpredictable lifestyle. So it's like, how do you juggle that with taking care of people's kids? But again, it's different rules there on that side, fewer things to worry about. But I still think, though, but if you're raising a kid, even on that side, though, I think it does require undivided attention. But anyway, that's just family politics, family drama. The point is that was the last experience that was a few days ago. And then I've had a couple more, but they've all been there in that astral home. Haven't had any in Asia because, I'm connected. Like, it's different, I mean, it is possible to theoretically, come out of my body and then be in astral Asia. That's a different type of experience. That's like the out of body experience where you come out of your body and you're still in the same like adjacent geographical space. It seems to happen. It seems to happen if I'm not already over on that side, doing something else. If I'm just asleep in my, both bodies are connected to each other, then I can get up out of my body, and then I'll find myself in astral Asia. I would really, really want to be and check out astral Osaka, Japan, because it's probably extremely interesting. But I just haven't had an out-of-body experience like that in a long time. Sam, I see a bunch of text on the screen, so let me try to catch up. That's why there are many levels in the afterlife. Our subconscious becomes our conscious, like what Jurgen says. Yeah. Does the subconscious become the conscious? I don't think it, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. It's not, it's open to interpretation, but in my opinion, I think Jurgen takes that concept just a little bit too far. Because on one hand, that's true. But on the other hand, it's like, if we're dealing with objective states of existence, then you also have to factor in everybody else's subconscious, right? Because if it was just your subconscious, then you'd be in a dream. You'd be in a lucid dream. That's kind of what happens in a lucid dream. So your subconscious will affect things like your body, your appearance. It will affect things like the kind of place you may initially find yourself in. It will affect things like your energy. So your energy can like physically manifest the mood in an environment. If someone's really dark and negative, and it happens here too, but on that side, like literally like the lights will dim and you'll feel a chill in the air because of somebody's mood, right? So again, that's their subconscious affecting the environment. But it's not like this hodgepodge, in my opinion, like Jurgen necessarily says, where I mean the way Jurgen describes it makes it sound like it's this really like abstract world where, if you think up of a rooster, there's a rooster, and you think of you think of whatever it might be, like the world's always changing in fluctuation. I don't believe that's the case unless you're in a lucid dream, right?
Yeah, and that doesn't really make sense because, well, and it doesn't really follow what his book says, because he talks about going to this place with this big elaborate hotel and interacting with all these people and these waiters who are serving people because of not punishment, but to make up for things, and then going to a restaurant and then a fair and people made stuff. And if it's just your subconscious, where's all that shit coming from? It can't. I mean, that doesn't make sense.
Right, well, because it's a shared reality, and I've gotten into debates with Jurgen about this.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and hi Jurgen, you might be watching this because I know Jurgen also watches. If I put this on YouTube, I know Jurgen watches the YouTube channel. So,
well,
hi Jurgen, it's okay because I disagree sometimes with Jurgen. I mean,
well, and I even asked him about that though in a question, because I said, well, remember in your book you wrote this and that, and it didn't make sense to me what he was saying. So that's fine.
What do you remember what his answer might have been?
He didn't answer me. It was a long thread, and I said, okay, I see what you're saying, but in your book, and I just explained like the situation I just explained right there. And I said, if you say it's just your subconscious or your reality and no one else's, where did all those people come from? I mean, it would have to be a shared reality.
Yeah, I think that the issue is more with how Jurgen is explaining it, because I don't think Jurgen has ever said it's not a shared reality. I think that is assumed it is a shared reality. He's not saying that the whole world is just a subjective thing that you've created. There's some OBE authors who do say that, going more to like kind of like Tom Campbellian areas here, and there's others who don't say that. So it's almost like this little bit of a pet theory some people have. I don't think Jurgen believes that. It's. In fact, I'm positive Jurgen, with those experiences, the restaurant. He states it's an objective, tangible world.
Yeah.
But
maybe I misunderstood how he wrote it.
But basically, yeah. I mean, what he is describing is that your subconscious basically determines your environment and how the environment is being shaped and created on that side. This is where I disagree a little bit, because there has to be a tangibility on that side. It's actually funny because I've discussed this with Jurgen, and he's confirmed this as well, which is that, like, if you're in a real astral state, you can't just create things out of thin air. It requires practice because it's a shared reality like here. Actually, a guy who comments in the videos a lot, Escape the Matrix, has talked about how on the astral side, if you're in a big crowded environment, you can't start like shaping and changing things because there's always people around. So I mean, it's everyone's shared reality. But if you walk away and go to like a private space out in the woods by yourself, you're able to start like manifesting and doing stuff. But it's like you have to be alone to be able to do it, or else everybody else's energy is going to kind of interfere with that. So I think that the big point is that it is a shared objective, and in many ways physical space, because that's just the nature of sharing reality. So I think, unfortunately, just the way Jurgen describes it just gets confusing or confuses people. But I think that's what's going on. Sam, let me Let me try to catch up with what you're writing here. He's in a shared reality. I know he's met some other dead people there. Yeah, there's been many shared reality. Yeah, so there just needs to be better ways to distinguish what's going on. Someone else raised their hand. Was it Keely? You have your hand raised?
No, that was from earlier. But
Okay.
I was going to say, though, it might have just been how the question was posed and how he answered that I didn't understand, because maybe that's why he didn't, respond. But it sounded like that's what he was saying, you're just making up your own reality. And then that didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, and some people really have that school of thought. They even have that school of thought about this reality, right? People get very into like The Secret or whatever. They may say, like, this whole reality we're in right now is created by our own minds and blah blah blah. And this is where, I mean, I don't follow this mode of thinking, because it's like, okay, you're creating your own reality, but the same people who get really into that are the same people who start judging people who are like getting sick or having things happen to them, because it's like, well, if you're creating your own reality, why did you create getting hit by a car? It's like, you start getting those types of people, and of course, I think few people bug me more than those types of people. So I just, I don't buy into all of that. So it's like, it's funny. Okay, we can say at the bottom line that there's consciousness. Consciousness creates realities, but
yeah, no, I agree with like Sam saying. No, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say that. I've read his books. I know he doesn't say that. But there was a post where he was making it sound like that's what he was saying. And it was a long post. And so that's where the question was posed. Like, why are you saying this? Because that doesn't go along with anything.
Yeah.
I understand he didn't say that, because I've read his books. I know he's met his mom. I know this and that. But it sounded like kind of that's what he was, saying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it was just a post. So I don't know. I think that, yeah. And I haven't read his more recent, but he has one called like The 10-Minute Moment. I haven't read that book. So, he may even have other like philosophical ideas these days that, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
and it's hard to get a lot out of a tiny little post too. You know what I mean? Like, you're not getting a big picture when someone's typing something. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I know Jurgen. Yeah, he wouldn't say it's all created in our minds. Like, so yeah, that's definitely not what he meant. But I do see the confusion that can happen trying to understand some of that concept. But basically, the way Jurgen, I interpret it, is when he says the subconscious becomes a conscious reality, is like I described earlier, which is that it's affecting, the world that's being created around people, where people go, what the reality that people share. Where I disagree a little bit with Jurgen is I don't think it's as radical as he says it is. So I don't think it's like, if it was as radical as he says it is, then everything would be this very chaotic place. It's continually like in fluctuation. Like, one person thinks of this, and then this is happening, but then somebody else thinks of this, and then that's happening. And then you'd have all this stuff happening at once, and it would be super chaotic. But then when you have experiences on that side, you find out that, yeah, there's like weird stuff happens. People's thoughts can make stuff happen, but it's like 90%, similar to here. So like, that's not, it's like you can be in an environment that's like really stable. So if it's that stable, that means that there's clearly like rules in place where it doesn't, where not everyone's subconscious is able to just like mess everything up. Sam, let me catch up and see what you have here. Yeah, lower astral levels, very solid, very hard to manifest. Also depends on what we mean by lower, because I think for Jurgen, like the middle astral, which is like really, really beautiful and great place, he might consider that lower, because he's been to like these really, really exalted levels. that I'd say like the majority of us would, we're not able to get to, or, we're not, it's a long path to get to those levels. I think by contrast, even the kind of middle level would be a quote lower level. When I think of lower level, I think of like, well, I don't want to say fire and brimstone and sulfur, but like I think of like dilapidated, nasty, dark astral dimensions. And yeah, but I think even in those levels, people are I think the whole reason's nasty and dark and dilapidated is because people are manifesting that, around them in a sense. So things don't, colors have a difficult time becoming very colorful and bright. All these things are affected by everyone's, consciousness that is lowering the environment down and making this really, really drab location. But anywhere I think on this astral level, you can't just pull things out of thin air. But then there are these higher levels, which to me would be higher, where it is much more possible to just think of an apple and make an apple appear. Like the way I see it, my idea is a little bit goofy. It's not like what everybody else's ideas are. But I see some disadvantages to that type of existence, just because it's kind of like if you can get anything you want immediately, then I feel like things would lose value a little bit. I kind of like the idea that things are more difficult to manifest, but that's just me personally. People have different ideas about that. That's why taxi drivers are still taxi drivers. Yeah, I mean, and there's also advantages like, look, on the astral side, I know there's taxi drivers because I've been in taxis. The fact there are taxi drivers means a lot of people can't just teleport around easily. Well, some people can, but still, like, where can you experience being a taxi driver? If you're on the higher astral level, you can't have that experience. And maybe it's a fun or interesting experience, picking people up. Just as an example, I mean, it might be fun being an astral taxi driver. Imagine the types of people that you meet. So you can't have that experience if you're on the higher astral level because everyone has all these crazy abilities. So where do you go if you want to experience being a taxi driver? Well, you can either reincarnate in New York City or go to the astral level, which is a little bit easier if you ask me. Hold on one second, guys. So I need to plug my laptop in because it's about to run out of batteries. 1 second. So you guys are ruminating that thought for us. Why do this? Okay, I'm back. Yeah, Jurgen said there's still strip clubs, movie theaters. Yeah, Jurgen's especially been to like the Astor version of Brighton, and so again, like everything that's there. I've been to strip clubs. It's really funny because I noticed that there's a preponderance of more like, shall we say, aesthetic interests and fewer industrial interests. So you will find more theaters and like entertainment venues and yes, strip clubs, then maybe you'll find here because there's less of a need for like dry cleaners because there's still more people who can like still have enough mental ability to like keep their clothes clean themselves, or maybe they won't even get dirty, right? So there's a little bit more of a preponderance for that type of stuff. Drinking, smoking, yeah, man. I line up with those same experiences that Jurgen has. I just have fewer experiences on like higher upper level types of places, probably because Jurgen's been meditating and involved in like a consciousness level exploration for about 40 years. So longer than I have, so that's probably why. But still, I mean, with the astral experiences I've had, like to me, like I'm really cool with all of that because like I like the idea that after I kick the bucket, I'll be in the same world we're in right now, but without the hang-ups and without the stresses and problems, and it's way more fun and interesting. So I'm cool with that. Okay, so it's actually the class time is actually up. So does anybody have any last thoughts or questions about this? We can do that real quick. Anybody?
Nope. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Corey. Corey, did you make it to your destination?
Not even close, but I will tonight.
Which freeway are you on? Are you on like the 405?
I'm on the 15 going south. I'm heading to West Covina tonight, so.
Okay.
Probably an hour or so. It's traffic now, so I'm going slow.
Yeah, it's only 3:15. That's nuts. But that's how it is. Okay, anybody else? Any last questions or ideas? Let me just see. Sam said, Todd Akamesis. Who is? I don't think I know this person. Is this like an OBE author? Sam?
Yeah, Todd's out there. He's on YouTube.
Oh, really?
He's into synchronicities.
Okay, so he's been motorcycle riding astrally. That's kind of I hadn't heard the name before. Yeah, I mean it's just like why not? Interesting. I wonder if it'd be interesting if these experiences get more common, and then people are just like, imagine someday. This is a fun way maybe to leave the class. Fun note to leave the class on. It's like imagine someday. Like people are like, so what'd you do last week? Well, in which dimension? I was motorcycle riding and hanging out with some relatives astrally, and then in this world, I was just working. It's like imagine someday if that's like how like if everyone's thinking multidimensionally, that would be interesting. All right. Well, I guess that's it for this class. Thanks for coming by. I'm sorry. Yeah, Keely?
I have one quick question.
Okay.
So if you are astral projecting, or when you go to sleep, say you want to say I was astral projecting and we were going to meet somewhere, is that possible or no?
It is possible. People I know who are 10 times more advanced than I am claim to do that regularly. I sometimes talk about Kensho. I mean, he's a super eccentric guy, but his stories are the most interesting because he claims that he's done that with people and that he's also met people astrally who he met up with in this life, like later down the road. So like he claimed one time he told me he met somebody astrally, and then he met the same person at a new workplace who recognized him immediately. It's like, hey, I met you in that out-of-body experience. He's like, yeah, hey, how's it going? So he has a lot of stories like that. I tend to believe him just because he's not like, he's not like a bullshitter, I guess, so, and he doesn't like trump the experiences up. It's like, I have to pick them out of his brain.
Yeah.
So, but that's just one guy though. I hear about this from lots of other people too. Even people like on some of the Facebook groups, like you'll see weird threads like, hey, we were hanging out yesterday astrally at this astral whatever location it was. And then, skeptics are like, yeah, right. But I mean, I believe it.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just had to ask that real quick.
And then Sam confirms this. Sam believes there's thousands. I haven't seen thousands, but Sam, you might be seeing more than I am. But that is an interesting number. All right. Anyway, so I guess I'm going to bounce out of here. I'm going to take a nap. It's 7:20 a.m. in Osaka, Japan. I woke up at 5, so went to bed at 1. So I don't know. I better sleep for a couple of hours. So thanks everybody for coming by. Thanks for being subscribers of Afterlife University. If I decide to put this on YouTube, then you're probably watching on YouTube right now. So thanks for coming by. Yeah, you can find out more by clicking on Show More. Head to afterlifetopics.com. Join the group Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, or if you want to become a student to help support the work I'm doing, help fund future like productions with Afterlife topics, as well as giving me enough money to eat sometimes. Then you can become a subscriber as well, join these classes. It's twice a week. These are the types of discussions we have. Not too many other places do this, so if you like that kind of thing, shoot me a message. You can head to the website. Anyway, thanks everybody, and I'll see you all next time.
See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye. Drive safe, Corey.